Hi everyone and welcome to this DCD talk. I'm James Raddings, Digital Portfolio Lead here at DCD, and today we'll be talking about scaling sustainably in the age of AI. Thanks very much to Conapto for sponsoring this, and I'm delighted to be joined by Stefan Nilsson, who's Chief Commercial Officer at Conapto. So great to be with you, Stefan. To start us off, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at Conapto?
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Stefan Nilsson, Chief Commercial Officer at Conapto. We've been with the company since we started Conapto back in 2018. We are a Swedish colocation provider, sites in Stockholm, and is obviously growing and trying to find new land and power, as everyone else in the industry at the moment. So that's us.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's obviously a huge amount happening in the industry now. You know, you mentioned land and power, but we've also got sustainability pressures, AI, changing customer expectations. I suppose from where you're sitting, what feels like the biggest change happening in the market today?
I think going back the last 2 years, I think the shift has been enormous. And the biggest shift, to be honest, is time to market in conjunction with the fact that the asks and the need for deployments are much, much bigger. If you go back 3-4 years, a 1-2 megawatt deployment was regarded as a big deployment. Nowadays, that's regarded as a small deployment. So I think that's probably one of the biggest shifts. And obviously that puts a lot of constraints in terms of finding power, finding land, permits, the ability to execute, and obviously financing. So it's a big shift. But as I said, I think time to market in conjunction with the deployments are much, much bigger today than they have ever been before.
Yeah. And we see, I mean, you guys are based in Stockholm, but we see a lot across the market, you know, with regulatory changes and the kind of environment of that, also quite a bit of NIMBYism and sort of community pushback. How are you kind of managing that and what's that like from where you're sitting?
I think that we've been so far quite lucky in Sweden and then in the Nordics. I think from that perspective, maybe not that much pushback. We are starting to see some of that happening also in the Nordics, as obviously the grid constraints is happening even here. If we still think that we have more power, available power, and more available land than maybe other regions in Europe still, but the constraint is happening here as well. And then obviously, as you look at that picture, then obviously we as an industry are challenged by other types of industries as well. And then that's also a big shift, I would say, between the Nordic countries. Sweden has always been an industrialized country. We've been very much into the base industries like paper mills, mining, steel production, wood, all of those kind of car industry. So we have a history of a very solid industrialized nation. And now suddenly a new industry comes in and wants to be part of the puzzle from that perspective.
Yeah.
That obviously takes some time for us to educate the rest of the society in terms of, okay, why do we need data centers, and why do we need to put them in Sweden, and why do we need to put them in Stockholm? So I think that's definitely coming more and more, and we really need to step up when it comes to educating the society.
Yeah, so plugging into that industrial heritage that you mentioned. In regards to, you know, you mentioned speed to market, and that's become such a big focus for everyone at the moment. How are things like modular design and prefab constructions changing the way that projects are delivered?
I would say it's a massive shift from that perspective. I think that's the at least how we see it. I think that's the only way forward when it comes to designing and building new facilities, because the modular design makes it easier to grow together with the need of the customers, and the prefab stuff obviously also shortens the delivery times and maybe also actually higher the quality assurance of the actual delivery. So you actually can prefab them in a very sound environment somewhere in a factory, and then you just lift them and put them on site from that perspective. So I think it's both a time to market perspective and also a quality assurance perspective that makes it much easier to work with modular design and prefab constructions.
Yeah, and finding what works and then essentially replicating that and the building blocks to scale.
Yeah.
And in regards to, we talk quite a lot about the blurred lines almost between the grey space and the white space. But I suppose at the same time, they are still fundamentally quite different environments with different requirements. So I suppose from a customer and design perspective, what are some of the challenges that arise on that front?
I think if modular and prefab was also a big shift in design, I think also the designing and working with the gray space and the white space has also fundamentally shifted in terms of our role as an operator. If you go back 3, 4, 5 years, we could pretty much build the whole data center, including the gray space, including the white space, because we pretty much know what the customer is coming with, because they're coming with standard CPU-based servers with maybe 3, 4, 5, maximum 10 kV per rack, meaning that there was no real issue in designing the data centers. All data centers look pretty much the same. Now, with the current hardware designs, everything from high density air-cooled design to now the latest models who are liquid cooled. The white space design is something that we cannot really build out from the beginning. We need to design that space together with the customer. And that's also a big shift now, that we actually need to be engaging much earlier together with the customer to find the right design, to be able to put exactly that type of hardware, because it's very hardware dependent at the moment in terms of designing the white space. And that's also obviously put some pressure on the gray space, because that can also shift from that perspective in terms of, okay, what type of power feeds do you need? What type of cooling loops and cooling environments do you actually need to cater for in your design? So I think it's been a big shift, but I think the biggest shift is you need customer engagement much earlier in the design, and the hardware that the customer is coming with is actually the thing that decides the end design. And another thing is that the OEMs, the likes of Dell, HP, Supermicro, for example, they are also becoming a much more vital part of the deployment. If you go back a few years, we rarely had any communication or partnerships with those guys. Now they are usually some of the guys that are actually pre-designing and pre-building the racks for the customer, shipping them to our site and deploying them for the customer on site, which is also a big shift from that perspective. They've gone from being just a server or a CPU a vendor to actually be the ones that are actually designing and building the whole rack solution.
Yeah.
So I think that shift is also interesting from that perspective, that we as an operator needs to broaden our partner landscape and needs to be more active also on that side.
Yeah, so that co-development angle, doing it quite early on and also ensuring all the components match up. I suppose from the customer perspective as well, have you seen more variation in customer demands over the last couple of years, or are you seeing more convergence?
No, it's definitely a big difference between design, because as I said, it all depends on what type of hardware the customer is either standardizing on themselves or what they can come over, because it's obviously a shortage also on the hardware side when it comes to NVIDIA or whomever is making the chips and the GPUs. So I think that's also a big shift from having products that are drawing like 5 to 10 kV per product to products that are actually drawing 20 plus kV per product, because obviously that puts a lot more pressure on the whole design and the whole rack design.
Yeah. Yeah, and just before we delve into sort of the chips a little bit more, because I'm quite keen to talk about that, but the sustainability angle. So you've got this constant pressure to execute faster, scale quicker than ever before, but do that in a sustainable manner. So how are you balancing all these priorities?
I would say that that's probably one of the biggest tasks we have as an industry. To be honest, as you say, we can't build fast enough. The demand for new capacity has never been higher than it is today. But at the same time, we are consuming more power. We are consuming more products, more steel, more concrete, everything. We consume more of everything. So obviously that puts a lot of pressure on the industry to try and do it as sustainable and conscious as possible, because obviously we have a responsibility towards both ourselves, the next generation, and the planet to do that. So I think that's definitely a thing that we need to look at. It's easier to do it in metro areas, for example. If you take Stockholm has the largest district heating network in the world, so we have a lot of good opportunities here in Stockholm to do heat reuse to district heating, for example. But that's very location based. If you have a big AI factory somewhere out in remote areas, then you don't have an off-taker for the heat, for example. So then you need to find other ways, and there are other ways. So you can work with PPAs, for example, to invest in more renewable power. You can maybe try and look at on-site or at least near-site production together with a utility company to be able to offload the grid from that perspective. I think in the future, I think we as an industry probably need to take more responsibility also for the actual energy production in an area, and not only buy the energy itself. I think we actually need to, because there will be grid congestion, and then there will be a shortage of power. It's going to happen even in Sweden or in Norway, even if we still feel that we have a lot of power. The power is going to be shortage of. That's for sure. So I think we need to take more responsibilities earlier in the process, also to help the utility companies, the TSOs and the DSOs to also build and finance new power production.
Yeah. The location element that you mentioned is very interesting, because, like you say, Stockholm has really good infrastructure which is conducive to heat reuse. But I suppose some locations that the utility companies can only do so much if the infrastructure of the city hasn't really changed in the last couple of 100 years. It's quite difficult. So it's interesting how all those come into play. Just looking a little bit more about, I know we spoke about some of the chip providers. You've got technology itself moving incredibly fast. New generation chips seem to be coming out every 12 months. How hard is it, from an infrastructure and facility design angle, to keep up with that pace of change when it takes a couple of years to build a data center?
Yeah, $1 million question, maybe. I'm not sure, but
I was going to say that wasn't a very friendly question, was it?
Yeah, but obviously it definitely puts a lot more pressure on the design and the forward thinking of how we build stuff, trying to build in as much flexibility into the overall design as possible, so that we can at least look at, okay, what's coming around the corner, what's the next version of, for example, NVIDIA's chipsets, which is going to be the Vera and Vera Rubin stuff, for example. Okay, how does that reference design look like? Okay, what's coming besides that in the next phase? It's probably the I think it's called Feynman or something like that, the next chipset. And okay, so what's the reference design of that? Is there anything we need to take in consideration to design new facilities? And as you say, the challenge for us is that it takes in best case scenario, maybe 1 to 2 years to just get hold of all the permits that you need to be able to start to build a new site. And then it takes you roughly 9 to 12 months to build the site. And when you have built the site, you want that site to last for at least 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting challenge going forward from that perspective. But I would say the only answer to that question is to be very close to the ship manufacturers, look at what they're doing, trying to be as flexible and agile as possible with the design and the way we do things. I think on the cooling side, I think a lot has already happened in terms of the shift from air cooled to liquid cooled. So now we have getting used to that on the cooling side. I think the next revolution will be on the power side, when we're probably at some point is going to shift from AC to DC power all the way into the rack. So the 800 VDC solutions, for example, that's NVIDIA is talking about already. That's probably going to come into play when you're going up against 600, 800, maybe 1 megawatt racks. That's when you're going to have to shift even on the power side, which could be a really tricky solution if you have pre-built your stuff already, and then suddenly the hardware vendors comes with a completely different design, even on the power side.
Yeah, and linking power and cooling up as well. We're seeing a massive increase in sort of end-to-end solution providers where, you're talking about this is the power, how do we cool it? But that timeline divergence and, like you say, staying really close to the chip manufacturers, keeping on the front foot and being proactive as well is critical to be ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, are there any other, over the next sort of 12 to 18 months or any plans that you can tell us about or projects that you've got coming up?
Yeah, as a lot of our customers already know, we are pretty fully booked at the moment. We're in a situation where we can't build fast enough in terms of the demand. So we are actively looking for new sites in Stockholm, and actually also maybe a little bit north in Sweden. Because as the sites and the demand is growing, and then the deployments are getting bigger and bigger. I think for us, Stockholm at some point probably will be too small, even in that case. So I think that's our next strategy to try and carve out more capacity as fast as possible. And as everyone else, it's about finding power, land, having the agreement signed, having the permits, and then the ability to execute and finance it.
Yeah. So watch this space, and if anyone in Sweden or the North Nordics has any powered land available, you know who to reach out to. So
we're interested.
Yeah, but I mean, always a pleasure, Stefan, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. I understand just from what we've spoken about today, you're very busy. So so looking forward to how it all plays out, and we'll have to have you back again soon to see how it's all progressing. But thank you everyone for watching as well. If anything that we've discussed today, if you'd like to talk to Stefan and the team at Conapto, please do reach out. And thanks again, Stefan, and we'll see you on the next one.